Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this one or two choice words from two-weight world champion Stephen Fulton, who said, "I want MJ to get beaten black and blue."
Yeesh, what's his problem?
Stephen Fulton also cheers for the monster, likely because before Inoue moved up to the super bantamweight division, the chance at undisputed was right there between Stephen Fulton and MJ Akhmadaliev, both of which had 2 world titles apiece. But the fight between them never happened. They both reigned as champions parallel to each other without a contest ever taking place. And it just sounds a lot like Stephen blames MJ for the fight not happening. In my purview, the blame applies to both sides because maybe Matchroom didn't try hard enough to make that fight for MJ, but the PBC didn't try hard enough to make that fight for Stephen. I know of no offers from the PBC to Matchroom for an MJ Akhmadaliev versus Stephen Fulton fight. That maybe Matchroom never sent an offer, I don't think they did, but PBC didn't send one either. And so it just is what it is. We're approximately 3 or 4 days out from the Inoue versus Akhmadaliev fight, and it has now come out that the fight will be broadcasted live, get this, on Top Rank's Facebook page. It's a very peculiar arrangement that here in America it will be broadcasted live on Facebook, where south of the border it will be on ESPN Knockout. I half expected it to land on DAZN, like Kenshiro's last fight. Kenshiro Teraji, whose fights here in America normally aired on ESPN, his last one aired on DAZN, so I just figured the same might apply to Inoue. But that is not the case. Apparently, they're going to be showing it live, free of charge, on Facebook.
Wow.
While they are still in between broadcasters and have yet to announce what platform are they going to land on moving forward. This is not encouraging.
This is not a good look.
But at least we now know where we can watch the fight on Sunday morning.
Live on Facebook.
As far as the fight between them, Inoue is coming off of a 5th-round stoppage win over Ramon Cardenas this past May, a fight in which he was dropped for the 2nd time in his career. However, he quickly recovered and finished the fight in spectacular fashion, extending his stoppage streak to 11. Meanwhile, Akhmadaliev, who holds a professional record of 12-1, is on a 3-fight winning streak. His last outing was a unanimous decision win over Luis Castillo. The only loss on his record came against Marlon Tapales, who Inoue just so happens to have hired for sparring in preparation for this fight. He also beat Marlon to become the undisputed champion at this weight after Marlon beat MJ. This time I chose training partners who were important to me. Each of them had something similar to Akhmadaliev, so I was able to respond to them properly and overcome them all, which was a key factor. When I was asked what Akhmadaliev and I had in common, I said overall strength. But I'm definitely not inferior in that respect. What concerns me is physical strength, although I won't face a tough opponent head-on with brute force, Inoue said. We know Inoue can get dropped. He will get hurt if he gets caught by MJ with a good shot, just like we saw with Cardenas. The only difference is that MJ is an executioner, and he won't let you recover. I'm realistic. I know it's going to be hard to beat Inoue in Japan. That's why we have to knock him out. I don't know if we can get the decision. Inoue throws a high volume of punches. We know that he has to catch him with a good shot, hurt him, execute, and finish him. MJ knows how to finish fights and has heavy shots. Inoue is vulnerable to getting knocked out. It's just a matter of having the right timing and not letting him recover by attacking and overwhelming, Joel Diaz, Akhmadaliev's coach, stated. I think there's a strong possibility that maybe MJ does a little better against Inoue than Stephen Fulton did. Stephen Fulton didn't just get knocked out, you understand? He got outboxed. He got dominated. Then he got stopped. Whereas MJ, I think MJ might be a little bit more challenging. I think MJ has a more authoritative punch than Stephen Fulton brought to the table, and it helps that MJ is a southpaw, so that makes him a bit trickier than your run-of-the-mill orthodox fighter.
So maybe it goes a little longer than the Stephen Fulton fight, and maybe Inoue has to work a little harder. He has to be mindful of MJ's power. He brings that to the table.
I, like many of you, expect Inoue to win. It's just a question of how. And outwardly, I feel this will be a somewhat more difficult assignment than the Stephen Fulton fight was. We'll see what happens on Sunday morning.
What has the experience now in the UFC? What from there can you bring to boxing?
I like when the night moves fast. Like right now, when you watch a boxing event, they'll have one fight, then there's a podcast.
Right.
Then there's another fight, and there's a podcast. And the night gets dragged out. I mean, it's bad enough for the people at home watching on TV. The people that are live, it has to be insane.
You know, I actually happen to agree with Dana on that. I like when the night moves fast, too. I mean, I don't think a ring walk should happen any later than 11 p.m.
I feel that any boxing match, every boxing match, should wrap up at around 12 a.m. But we've seen in the past some shows run well into the wee hours of the morning. I remember when Lara fought Jarrett Hurd many years ago on Showtime. Those two guys were still fighting well after 12 a.m. And what about some of those top-ranked shows that have run well into the night? That's happened on so many occasions. It's happened so many times in some matchroom shows where there are breaks in the action, intermissions in between the fights. It's actually a lot better experience when the night moves quickly from one fight to the next. On some of Turkey's shows, the concerts in between, boxing can do without that. We just want to move on from one fight to the next. So on that, I agree with Dana.
Dana White did an interview with PBS yesterday, and he has now said essentially that his side of this new thing with TKO and Turkey Al-Sheikh, he'll be like the Contender Series to the ring cards. At least that's what it sounds. What do you make of all of this? It seems to have changed from what we first thought Dana and Turkey.
It's what I said the league was. It's lower level fighters and young prospects who they believe they can build into big stars, to big pay-per-view stars. I don't think it works, but will it? These guys are very powerful. They're very clever, and I'm sure they're going to come up with something compelling. But in boxing, that's not a new format. That's been done before. We're all trying to build stars. Now, to do it in a league with some different kind of marketing and profile and storylines, yeah, maybe you can unearth a talent. But people want to watch the big stars fight. That's the reality. They want to watch great fights between people they know.
I don't disagree with Eddie because that is how a boxing fan's mind works. If a boxing fan sees a card and there are no familiar faces on it, they're just not interested in what happens. And you won't be seeing very many, if any, familiar faces on Dana White's TKO League because it's insulated. It's basically a biosphere.
It seems like the entire boxing world is just now catching up to what I've been telling you for months now, that for all of the apocalyptic doom and gloom that some were forecasting, people like Lou DiBella, there were people out there saying that TKO was going to put the other promoters out of business, the sanctioning bodies out of business. Do you remember all of that?
And do you remember that I told you, it's not what they're making it out to be. It's not as big a deal as they're making it out to be. It's just something different, a separate lane, an entity existing parallel to the world of boxing we already know, just not necessarily a part of it. TKO fighters are not going to box for the same belts as everybody else. In some ways, that's a good thing, and in some ways, that's a bad thing. For Dana White and the powers that be, it's a good thing that they have full control of the promotion and everything that goes on within it, but for the fighters, it might be a bad thing that they're not encountering the same challenges as everybody outside of their biosphere. You're talking about low to mid-tier talent that you are developing. Well, are they going to develop properly?
What is essentially a birdcage? A hamster wheel?
And what about marketability? A big part of developing a fighter into not just a well-rounded fighter, but a marquee attraction is the appeal of what other fights that fighter might have with the other fighters at their weight. A TKO fighter isn't going to have that working for them because they exist separate to the rest of the world of boxing. Now, I don't want TKO to fail.
I think boxing does need something new and something fresh to fill the void left behind by the PBC and Top Rank.
I'm not rooting against them, but these are the challenges they face, trying to exist separately from everybody else in what's supposed to be the same sport. There might be some pros to that as far as the promotion, but there may be also some cons in terms of marketability and development, fan engagement.
What sounds more and more like a feeder system to Turkey LL Sheik's Ring Magazine cards that fighters on TKO will eventually pass through that process and graduate to box on Turkey's Ring Magazine shows. But will the fighters that graduate go on to become the Terrence Crawfords or the Canelos, the Bams?
As stated, I'm not rooting against them. I want to see what they've got. A part of me actually wants them to succeed, to bring something new to the table, something fresh. But it's going to be difficult.
Wants to be the CEO of boxing.
Almost as if he is with the CEO of the UFC.
Yeah, because they're trying to get the Muhammad Ali Act changed. You're not going to see me slagging off Dana White, not because I don't want to upset him, because I respect him. The one thing that I would really like at this point in my career is to go head-to-head with him and to take him on. I want to compete against Dana White. I want to prove that I'm much better than him as a boxing promoter. So I'm excited for him to come into the space. That doesn't mean we're going to fall out, by the way. Competition's fantastic. But you're not going to come into boxing and steamroll the game. It's not going to happen. Let's see how it plays out.
Eddie Hearn wishes to compete against Dana White to prove who the better promoter is, while at the same time asserting that Dana's not actually bringing anything new to the table, that this sort of a structure, the sport of boxing has seen it before, and it didn't work the first time. So with even more money and even more people behind it,
It all equates to the same thing.
the boxing fans want to see familiar faces, familiar fighters in big fights. And if all you're bringing to the table are low to mid-tier fighters, well, you're not actually competition for a Matchroom or a Queensbury, then are you? Competition for a Top Rank, competition for a Golden Boy, because you're not actually competing amongst them, you're existing parallel to them in a biosphere, in a bubble. Next year, when it gets here, is going to be interesting to see how it is Dana White and the people at TKO mean to get this thing off the ground.
All right, man, this is from me. All right, man, this is from the war roll, not from me. All right, so don't kick my ass. The question is why he ducked the fight against Canelo at 168 while it was mandated by the WBC.
So there was no interest in Canelo fighting me, even though I was mandated. I think they made it extremely clear that Canelo said that I didn't fight nobody. I had no value to fight him. So like I said, I wasn't going to sit around and be at 168 if I wasn't going to get guaranteed a shot. They mandated me, but that, Canelo, as he showed, he does whatever he wants. Canelo was never interested in that fight, so that's why we didn't get the fight.
It's not really answering the question.
It's not.
If the fight was mandated by the World Boxing Council, why didn't he see it through? Why didn't he stick around, pick up that belt? Why didn't he?
Picked a hell of a time to move up. He decided to leave the division at a time where the World Boxing Council finally ordered the fight.
While it is true that Canelo Alvarez had no specific interest in facing David, him specifically, and he put down the fight more than once, that's not the signal for David to ease up and ease off, because it was the same way with Gennady Golovkin when that was a conversation so many years ago.
So then what do you think happened?
I think David outgrew 168. I think his body ran out of time. and he couldn't make it anymore. It's the short answer. You've been seeing him. You see how big he gets in between fights, and he was already there for a very long time. There's no way he was going to continue to keep making that weight. Moving up to 175, it wasn't necessarily a choice. I think he had to.
I'm still a little bit peeved that Canelo didn't fight him, because I'm not a big supporter of David or his boxing. I don't think he's anywhere near as good as he's made out to be. The guy who couldn't knock out Caleb Plant and couldn't knock out an 11-0 David Morrell is gonna knock out a guy who's been in there with better people, better fighters, never been dropped, never been stopped.
Yeah, right.
The old saying goes that scarcity creates value. And at a time where the PBC was facing a scarcity of flagship fighters, Wilder faltered, so did Errol Spence Jr., and they were really just down to Gervonta and David. That explains the push that David has got as of late.
Scarcity of flagship fighters at the PBC has resulted in a harder push to make David out to be something that he's not. He's not the Mexican monster. A monster would have been able to steamroll Caleb Plant.
A monster could have. A real monster would have. Do you think that Caleb would go the distance with an Artur Beterbiev? I'm convinced he wouldn't go the distance with Christian Mabili.
I think Christian Mabili at 168 would wear out and knock out Caleb Plant where David couldn't put him away. So what's all the fuss about? Moves up in weight, takes on Alexander Vazdik, who's in his late 30s now, and he didn't beat him like a drum either. I mean, Alexander was no worse for wear after the fight. And what about David Morrell? He beat David Morrell.
But he didn't stop him, he didn't drop him, he himself got dropped throughout the course of the fight. That all the signs, all the red flags are there, that David is not what he's made out to be. So I'm a little bit angry that Canelo didn't take the time out to expose him.
Because I believe that he would have. I believe that stylistically, he could have. Granted that Canelo's got a lot of wear and tear, and he's getting on in age, but David is nothing special.
A lot of that shit is just promotion. A lot of that shit, it's just hype.
For God's sake, what's the best name on David's resume? Caleb Plant, who Canelo knocked out, but David didn't.
Give me a break.
So now he's fighting Anthony Yard. He finally decided to bend the knee and kiss the proverbial rings and work with Turki El Sheikh, largely out of necessity because the PBC ain't got no light heavyweights for him to fight, and they ain't got no money to bring them to him.
Been saying that the whole time. The light heavyweight division is a largely international division, and you're not going to get those fighters to come over here for peanuts on the dollar.
Thus, for David to make any kind of real money at this point in his career, after 2 or 3 box office appearances, he ain't got much of a choice. He has to work with Turki.
He's fighting Anthony Yard.
And being honest with you, I am more impressed by Anthony Yard's career losses than David Benavidez's career wins. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that David Benavidez wins this Anthony Yard fight. He's a big boy, and he hits hard. And David Benavidez's defense ain't the best.
See what happens.